Are we dumber than we used to be? Maybe. Or maybe we're just wrong about what it means to be smart.
Our brains evolved for social interactions. So when you're like talking to your friend next to you in the math class, that is actually what our brains are for.
This week on Explain It to Me from Vox, our crisis of stupid and how to get our brains back. New episodes Sundays wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Ned Herndon, and this week on Today Explained, I traveled to Minneapolis to speak with Attorney General Keith Ellison, who is suing the Trump administration over ICE descending on his state.
It would mean that we had federal active duty troops patrolling our streets, which is concerning because the way ICE does its business is been proven over and over again to be deeply problematic.
New episodes of Today Explained drop every day of the week wherever you get your podcasts. And you can now watch our Saturday interviews at youtube.com/Vox.
This is Unexplainable. I'm Meredith Hodnott. We love hearing from listeners. We read every email you send, and we especially love hearing from listeners that have really cool jobs. Could you read the email that you sent in?
Sure. Yeah, let me just pull it up. Hello, Unexplainable. I'm a violin maker, and I really enjoyed your recent episode on A440 and the journey that it's been to get there.
Michael Doran makes violins and cellos in Seattle, and he wrote in to share his perspective on our episode last September called What's A? All about the musical note A and the long and windy road to standardize it around the world at 440 hertz. Instrument makers were on the front lines of that international coordination. And even today, Michael wrote in to us to say that he still thinks about different tunings in his work.
One of the interesting aspects that comes up in my work is that some symphonies, notably San Francisco and Boston, are tuning to a sharper A. Then sometimes the soloist will turn, 1 hertz sharper to get a little extra power and projection over the orchestra. I made a cello for the principal of the BSO, and I had to make sure it sounded good at A444 or even 445. He wanted higher tension strings as well, so all that adds up to more stress on the instrument. But it really is amazing just how a tiny bit sharper can give a lot more projection and brilliance. And it's an interesting puzzle for makers. Lastly, I do my best to protect my hearing, but I do have occasional short-term tinnitus where things will go quiet and I'll hear a pure tone in one ear for a few moments, and the one in my right ear is a perfect A440 and the left ear is slightly sharp, maybe more like A442. Cheers, Michael Doran.
Thank you so much for reading that.
You're welcome. And I did fact check myself, and I called the principal of the Boston Symphony and I was like, do you guys really tune to 444? And he was like, no, we tune to 441. and I was like, do you ever tune, like when you're soloing, do you tune to, 1 hertz higher to get an edge? And he's like, I don't need an edge. so that's wrong. I did think about it when I made the cello. That's true, but it's not true that they actually tuned to 444. I read that Berlin Symphony turns to 442, but that's the sharpest I could find. So 441 is pretty standard.
Got it. But the 444 is like pushing it.
Super pushing it, yeah. Although I did have one of my local violinists come in. I actually had their like best buddies. They often come in together, Andrew and Max. And Andrew is like a 440 purist. He loves the 440 and he thinks you should just play at 440. And then Max is a 443 guy and he calls it a happy A. Like you tune just a little bit more. And he loves that A443. And it was so fascinating to have both their violins in the shop at the same time, and one was tuned to 440 and one was tuned to 443, and just the like tiny difference in the sound. Max's violin just sounded so much more like direct and focused and kind of like edgy. It almost made me like just a little bit uncomfortable to listen to. And then the 440, you play it and you're just like, oh, it's just kind of sighs. You can kind of sink into that A440. So it's just very interesting how these teeny changes make such a difference.
Yeah, I feel like it's so subtle, it's almost subliminal.
Yeah, it's just interesting because there's such different players too. Andrew he has sort of a more delicate touch, a lighter touch with the bow. Not that he can't play forcefully, but that's just not his like default. And I feel like Max just he attacks the violin with his bow, and he can play softly too. But just in general, he likes sort of a heavier bow hand and more movement. And then Max just got these super duper fancy literal gold strings. They just came out and they're like super expensive and they're wrapped in actual gold and whatever. Fun. But gold is heavy and tends to give sort of a warmer sort of a sound. So he's got this like edgy playing style, but then he wants the slightly warmer strings. And maybe in the end, do they get to the same spot? Like we've got a delicate player playing with edgy strings and a edgy player playing with warm strings. So like maybe we're getting to the same point in the end.
When you hear these notes, what are the different ways that you're interpreting the vibes of these different tunings?
Yeah, right. It's totally like a vibes thing. It almost feels like a presence in the notes, something around the edges, because it's still an A, right? Like it's close enough that like you would call it an A, but it's just a little bit juiced, a little bit almost like anxious, something like that. And the 440 feels sort of like a little more spread out, a little more relaxed. It breathes a little more. I wonder what I don't know. I never hear a 439. So like I wonder if that's even more relaxed.
It's interesting too, because like when you're talking about these numbers, right? The 440, the 439, the 444, it's like literally how much energy is going into that note.
Yeah, totally. So 440 is 440 cycles per second. So like literally the wave that is traveling through the air is literally oscillating back and forth 440 times a second. And so there's a way in which it has a sharper energy because it's literally sharper when it's moving through the air, because those little waves are smaller as they get to your ear.
Right.
And then, I mean, on top of all this, like there's the pure tone, the A440, right? Violins are so neat because they play all of these notes around the primary note. We don't always want everything to be as efficient as possible, because then it sort of turns into this pure sine wave kind of a thing, right? Like I don't actually want all of the energy to go into making that pure tone. I need some of it to go into the overtones and the notes around the note, and that's where you think about like tone colors. Like that's how violinists talk about like a sweet tone or a piercing